director of the business division for the Wyoming Secretary of State, and I'm here to talk briefly a little bit about the state of Wyoming and what's going on there before I get to introduce the next speaker. Wyoming is a wonderful state. We have a lot going on that's very positive for Bitcoin and our industry. We have CleanSpark moving in. They took over some mining sites that you may have that were in the news that were owned by that the Trump administration claimed were owned by the Chinese government, actually owned by Bitmain, but CleanSpark has them now. We also have a very freedom-focused legislature. We just passed a bill that allows for the carrying of firearms all throughout the state. We basically got rid of all gun-free zones. So thank you. Very freedom-forward state, very Bitcoin-focused state. We have a couple of problems. One of the problems that we have is we were actually one of the first states to have a Bitcoin reserve bill entered into our legislature, and it failed. It failed early. One of the reasons why it failed, the key reason why it failed, is we got rugged by an important individual who had told us that he was going to support the bill, and then at the actual hearing changed his mind on the floor. So that's what happened, but it's not his fault. It is, but the fault is there were no Bitcoiners that showed up. Nobody came to testify in favor of this bill. I was there. I couldn't testify because I work for the state, so I'm not allowed. But I'm sitting on my hands when we have the treasurer's office coming in and saying all of these negative things about Bitcoin, and there's no one there to rebut. That's a problem. Bitcoiners have a history of not believing they should get involved in politics, and maybe that you shouldn't get involved in politics in the usual way, but we need to show up. With the current administration, the Bitcoin and, sorry to say, crypto groups have political power now, but those other groups actually are out there doing things in a way that we're not. One of the things that I never shared is that between the time the Wyoming bill was introduced and it was defeated, the legislator that had introduced it got calls. He got calls from Ripple, asking him to modify the bill to allow Ripple on it as well. The only reason that didn't happen is because he called me immediately after and said, "What should I do?" I said, "No, shut that down." Okay? But thank you. But what happens if there aren't Bitcoiners in the room? That's what happens. Okay? So we're at a cusp where the normies, the political apparatus, don't really yet see a nice differentiation between Bitcoin and everything else. And if everything else is giving them money and is actively involved, everything else is going to get listened to. So Bitcoiners, as a defensive mechanism at least, need to get involved, and locally and at the state level, as Dennis Porter said earlier. And that's very important. The national level, they'll take care of themselves, but those of us who can need to go to city councils. One of the other interesting things that was passed recently in Wyoming is the ability for counties and municipalities to buy Bitcoin. Not specifically, it just opens them up to having an investment board. Well, that investment board can make decisions. Get appointed to the investment board if you happen to be in Wyoming like I am, and tell them that you can buy a Bitcoin ETF now because that's a commodity stock. So buy the ETF. The only way you do that is you get involved and you get appointed to that board. So we could actually have, by a roundabout means, Bitcoin on the balance sheet of lower level government entities, states, cities, and counties in Wyoming very quickly, even though we didn't pass the strategic reserve. We're gonna bring it back next year and the year after that if we have to. Sometimes these things can take multiple cycles. I really do hope that the state that we're in here, Texas, happens to pass it before us. I wouldn't have said that 6 months ago, but now that we're out of the running, I hope Texas or some other state does beat us to the punch, because it needs to happen. And it needs to happen so that it normalizes everything and it makes the whole environment understand this and get off our back. We can't have a choke point 3.0.